couple of reports have come out recently, and I'll try and put kind of my point of view on them. Two reports, one by Electrifying, one by the AA. Fleet News has morphed them into their own report, and I'm going to try and morph it into my report, into my perspective. The report in Electrifying, a couple of pictures of Ginny Buckley, who's pretty easy on the eye, but she's a big electric vehicle mouthpiece. Everybody's got a job to do. Hopefully, this could be a sign of them telling the truth, but I think it's more likely a sign that they want to put pressure on the government to give out even more money on EVs, this time on used EVs, because as we all know, the EV mouthpieces, they can't sell vehicles, they can only give them away. Survey shows used market needs boost to make EVs work. This is by Sam Burnett, 26th of January 2026. Consumer confidence in battery health and a low-cost loan scheme for used EVs would do more for electric vehicle adoption than the electric car grant, according to the results of a new survey. The polling was done by the AA and electrifying.com, asking non-EV drivers their perceptions of going electric. I've got completely different ideas about this, because I think that people, they're asking customers, they're asking people who aren't buying them why they're not buying them, and then I think they're interpreting it wrong. And this is the headline: just 3% of potential EV buyers feel confident about buying a used EV, down from 8% in recent years, and despite the healthy flow of second-hand electric cars arriving on the market. Well, there's nearly 40,000 on Auto Trader now, gone up a massive amount, and coming through daily and putting pressures on residuals daily. 38% of respondents said they'd be more likely to get a used EV if it came with a battery health certificate. Well, that should be more than 38%, that should be 100%, because that just shows you that 62% of people who are thinking about buying EVs are idiots. Why would you not? It takes 2 minutes to get a battery health certificate, a battery test. Why would you not insist on it? A survey by YouGov in 2025 found that battery safety and longevity were chief concerns for used buyers who weren't sure whether to go ahead with an electric purchase. The Scottish Government brought in an interest-free loan scheme for EV purchases in 2011 that has provided more than 230 million in loans. Electrifying founder Ginny Buckley thinks it would be a sensible option to boost second-hand electric sales across the whole of the UK. But you see, this is it. This is where you're sending out mixed signals. All you evangelists are saying how fantastic these EVs are, and then in the next breath, you're saying that people need incentives to buy them. Why do they need incentives? It just doesn't ring true, does it? In fact, it reminds me of an argument that Ross and Phoebe had in Friends about dinosaurs. It's the same thing. You're so confident, you know all about it, you know all about the subject, and then somebody else can just say something and you think, well, yeah, maybe.
Are you telling me that you are so unbelievably arrogant that you can't admit that there's a teeny tiny possibility that you could be wrong about this?
There might be a teeny tiny possibility.
can't believe you caved. That was fun.
To boost second-hand electric sales across the whole of the UK. Now, this isn't me saying this. This is, was it Simon Bennett or Gordon Bennett or something? I've long argued that the real engine of... Oh, no, it was Ginny. I've long argued that the real engine... No, Ginny. If it had a real engine, it wouldn't be a problem. They'd be selling okay. The real engine of the EV transition is the used market. The real engine of every main new car dealer, is the used car department, because unless the used cars are selling, the new car department can't take used cars in, because you just get bottled up. Yet policy continues to focus almost exclusively on new cars, she said. If the government is serious about accelerating uptake, it needs to stop overlooking the used market and start supporting it properly. Like they do ICE cars, you know, diesels and petrols. Oh, hang on a minute, they don't, do they? They don't do anything for that. That's strange. Start supporting it properly. Practical measures like requiring standardised independent battery health checks, better consumer education again, condescending, and access to low-cost finance would do far more to unlock demand than continuing to prioritise new car sales. Well, again, if something depreciates very quickly when you bought it new, used buyers get a cheap car. New buyers get a dear car. And then they stop buying them new. And then there's no cheap used ones. Rather than devalue the used ones with grants, you need to find some way of supporting them. So again, all these ideas that these people come up with, they're just going to drive residuals further and further down all the time. Because as I say, all they can think about is giving stuff away, getting some money off the taxpayer so they can give it away cheaper, because it won't sell on its own. It can't stand on its own 2 feet. A product that can't stand on its own 2 feet is dead in the water. It's circling the plug hole. Some 44% of drivers say incentives towards the purchase of a used EV, like Scotland's interest-free loans, would make them more likely to buy one. So cheaper. AA President Edmund King said that an increase in used EV sales would be a game changer. Rocket scientist. AA EV Readiness Index, December 2025. Uncertainty over EV policy dents confidence to switch to EVs. Insurance prices reduce, but used EVs become more expensive. Really, Sherlock? Well, used EVs don't become more expensive. EVs are dropping a lot more than insurance is going up, so that statement's untrue. Overall readiness score grows, but remains under halfway at 48.8 out of 100. Whilst the index shows some progress, the conditions that support drivers' shift to EVs remain challenging for many, says AA President. Growing political and policy uncertainty is putting the brakes on drivers' willingness to switch to electric vehicles. According to the latest AA UK EV Readiness Index, the European Commission's plans to water down their 2035 zero emissions target and recent calls from politicians to scrap the zero emission vehicle ZEV mandate have created a climate of confusion and hesitation among consumers and manufacturers alike. Well, they should do, but they should forget about the Conservatives and Labour, because they're a no-go. Reform have said that they're just going to cancel the whole ZEV mandate and get us out of this stupid race to the bottom where our electric is the most expensive in Europe. If the UK is serious about accelerating EV adoption, 2026 must bring stronger, clearer guidance and meaningful incentives. Not just sort the business out about how they're selling them, stop lying, Sell them to get rid of all these shills, all these mouthpieces that keep yapping off, and everybody can see they're lying and creating mistrust in the market from everybody. Nobody believes what they're saying, surely. Surely you can't believe it. Surely you're not that stupid to believe that when a vehicle's dropping £3,000 a month, you can save £1,500 over the whole year. Surely you're not that daft. This uncertainty is compounded by concerns over the proposed EVED scheme, which would see electric car owners paying a new tax based on annual mileage from April 2028, 3p a mile. ICE vehicle owners pay 53 pence plus VAT per litre of diesel or petrol they buy. All you have to do is pay 3 pence a mile. And it's going to get, don't think you're going to get away with 3 pence, because if EVs take off, they have to replace 58 pence a litre fuel tax. So you'll be paying way more per mile. And then they'll reduce the tax incentives as well. So you lot, again, turkeys voting for Christmas. While the intention to ensure EVs contribute to road maintenance is understandable, the timing and lack of clarity risks deterring some of those who were considering making the switch. Well, obviously they want to stop climate change. It's nothing to do with money. Despite a modest rise in the overall readiness score to 48.8, up from 47.3 last quarter, the foundations of drivers' readiness to adopt an EV remain fragile. The AA's data shows that while EV insurance prices have fallen, have they? Offering some encouragement, used EVs have become more expensive relative to petrol and diesel cars. Well, I suggest they get somebody else to do the research, because that is crap. The other thing is, the AA brought a report out the other day, which Auto Trader have got involved with, and said that EVs are easier to fix and more are fixed by the roadside than ICE cars. But now, this was only out the other day, but now, and a small uptake in out-of-charge breakdowns due to colder weather has added to consumer nervousness. But I'm reading every day that Gordon, the TV guy, he's always on about, he can defrost his car and no problem, he's got the heater on. And it's quite funny really, because I was out in an EV the other day that got a heat pump. I couldn't get warm and I couldn't keep the windows clean. That's honestly what happened. Windows kept steaming up. Couldn't get rid of it. I had it on full blast and I was still cold. Edmund King, AA president, said drivers are being buffeted by mixed messages and policy reversals. Talk of the ZEV mandate being scrapped or delayed. What's it got to do with him? Really, the AA, they fix cars, don't they? What does it matter whether you buy an ICE car or an EV? What does it matter to him? Why is he sticking his nose in? Why do they keep bringing these reports out about EVs? Does it not make you wonder? The ZEV mandate being scrapped or delayed and the introduction of new taxes on EVs risks undermining years of progress. You are kidding me. Do you call that progress seriously? Spending $5.5 billion, this is the manufacturers to bribe people to buy EVs, the government giving away thousands of pounds on each new EV to get you to buy it to start off with, then tax incentives. You're kidding me, aren't you? You think that's progress? Guy invents a cheeseless mousetrap. It's a block of wood with a razor blade on the top. Mouse comes along, looks over the razor blade and goes, "Where's the cheese?" EV grants, tax incentives are a cheeseless mousetrap for car owners. Those already on the fence may now be stepping back to the familiar territory of petrol or diesel. So let me just get this straight. 9 out of 10 EV owners won't go back to a petrol or diesel. But now they're stepping back to familiar territory of petrol or diesel. So does that mean they're not going back, they're going forward? I think it does, doesn't it? rather than embracing the switch to electric. What if you've embraced it and you don't like the feel? Whilst the index shows some progress, the conditions that support drivers' shift to EV remain challenging for many. The drop in EV insurance pricing at a slightly faster rate than for ICE insurance is great news for consumers. If you've seen my last two vlogs, and I've got loads more where EVs have been written off for basically a rear bumper. Trust me, that's wrong. That is just not right. It's great news for consumers, but there are wider concerns about used car pricing where most private sales occur. If the UK is serious about accelerating EV adoption, 2026 must bring stronger, clearer guidance and meaningful incentives. Only then will we see real momentum and confidence among drivers to make the change. Consumer confidence in used EVs almost non-existent, by Gareth Roberts, 26th of January 2026. Now Gareth has combined these two articles to make one story. Just 3% of drivers would have confidence in buying a used electric vehicle, EV, new research suggests. Concerns about battery life are a major barrier, with more than a third, 38%, saying a formalised battery health certificate would give them more confidence. Well, you can get one for 35 quid. So why don't you put your hand in your pocket and get one? If the dealer isn't giving you a battery health certificate, then don't buy it. For 35 quid, he's either hiding something or he's an idiot. You don't want to buy an electric vehicle off somebody who doesn't know what they've taken into stock, who's taken an EV in blind. You don't want to know, because if they're prepared to do that, they are stupid. They don't deserve to be in the motor trade. They don't deserve your business. All car dealers have to do due diligence. They've got to make sure the mileage is all right and the history's all right. That's the minimum they can do. The minimum they can also do, of course, you check an MOT. The minimum they can also do is check the battery before, because they haven't got a leg to stand on. If you buy a vehicle that the dealer hasn't any proof that the cam belt's been done, and he sells it to you and you ask him and he says, no, I don't know, then you've got the right, and this has been proven in court, you've got the right to get that dealer to change the cam belt, because you don't know whether it could snap tomorrow and he doesn't know whether it can snap tomorrow. That's the same with the battery, and I'm pretty sure that if somebody tests that in court with the judges these days, crikey, I'm surprised they don't say, well, you've got to fit a new battery on a used car, or when it gets to a certain mileage, that battery could go, so you have to fit a new one. It wouldn't surprise me in the slightest if that didn't happen. A battery health certificate would give them more confidence. The research from the AA and electrifying.com also shows that there is a significant gap between perception and reality when it comes to EV batteries. Well, let me just say this. An EV shield's reality is a lot different to actual reality. In the real world reality, it's different. Just 2% of drivers believe a battery typically lasts longer than a petrol or diesel engine. Well, I'm sorry, but I don't believe it either. Despite growing real-world evidence that modern EV batteries often outlast their combustion equivalents. Well, you see, the thing is, often EVs haven't been around that long, and there's a lot of vehicles that are still around that are petrol and diesels. So I'm sorry, but you can't convince me of that either. And also, there's a lot of EVs, I see them every day, non-runners, in the auction. So again, for the amount of EVs that are on the road, The amount of non-runners I see and crashed ones, it doesn't look good to me. An updated battery health data from Geotab, published earlier this month, suggested that EV batteries continue to perform strongly through their operational lifespan, even as fast charging becomes more common. I think there's studies where fast charging develops dendrites or whatever in EV batteries, and it doesn't do them too much good. I'll go into this report at length in another vlog, but it's very damning. It really is. To me, I'll just read you the conclusions at the bottom. EV battery health remains strong, even as vehicles are charged faster and deployed more intensively, said Charlotte Argue. Well, I'd have to argue with that. Senior Manager for Sustainable Mobility at Geotab, our latest data shows that batteries are still lasting, well beyond the replacement cycles most fleets plan for. You have to look carefully at the wording. I do not like that. For example, a 60 kilowatt battery operating at 80% state of health effectively behaves like a 48 kilowatt hour battery. Geotab's data shows that while degradation rates vary by model, charging behaviour and usage patterns, the majority of modern EV batteries remain fit for purpose well beyond typical ownership and fleet replacement timelines. They are basically saying to you, first users, don't you worry, you'll be all right. But the second user, when it's on the used car market, buyer beware. Another point, charging power is now the strongest operational influence on EV battery health. Vehicles that relied heavily on DC fast charging above 100 kilowatts experience faster degradation, averaging up to 3% per year, compared with around 1.5% for vehicles that primarily used AC or lower power charging. So, fast charging degrades your battery twice as fast. It analysed real-world battery health data from more than 22,700 electric vehicles across 21 makes and models, drawing on several years of aggregated telematics information. The updated analysis shows an average annual battery degradation rate of 2.3%, compared to 1.8% in Geotab's 2024 findings, which to me, again, is damning. It's up over a quarter. It's up over 25% from what it was last year, which can only be bigger batteries, faster charging. As batteries get bigger, it'll either take you 2 weeks to charge your EV at home, or you'll have to go to a fast charger thing, and potentially damage it. It analysed real-world battery health data from more than 22,700 electric vehicles across 21 makes and models, drawing on several years of aggregated telematics information. I think in the scheme of things, 22,000 vehicles isn't a lot when there's like 7 million used ones sold every year. So it's, nah. AA President Edmund King says that its research shows that drivers need convincing on battery longevity before buying used EVs. However, he believes used buyers should be reassured that the zero-emission vehicle ZEV mandate requires manufacturers to provide an 8-year or 100,000 mile battery warranty, which will cover most EVs. It covers most EVs so long as it don't get water in. It covers most EVs so long as they don't get damage underneath the battery, go over something, or are in a bump. You look at these vehicles that are in a bump and they're category S, structural damage. So once they've been in a crash, does that mean the warranties are null and void? None of the EV shills seem to address that. And again, there seems to be a heck of a lot of EVs crashing under, I might say, dubious circumstances. Recognising the need to give used buyers confidence to make the switch, Mark Smith, head of fleet and used cars for Tesla UK and Ireland, said all our vehicles have a built-in tool for checking the health of the battery. We hope other manufacturers adopt this thinking to benefit the transition to sustainable energy. Call me sceptical, but I'd want an independent test done. because I've seen some tests where it shows that an EV battery has got 102%. And I think there's a possibility, as I say, call me sceptical, there's a possibility that there is a margin in EV batteries. And the margin is to stop them dropping below 70% while you've got it and while it's still in warranty. It's quite a clever strategy, don't you think? If it was 100% and it dropped to 70% and you had to give a battery out at 15 grand, or if you said that 90% was 100%, you know, like your petrol gauge, you fill it up with petrol, don't you? And it stays on full for ages. And you think, oh, it's doing a lot of miles per gallon. And then all of a sudden it starts coming down, and then it goes down a lot quicker, doesn't it? Because you've got like the filler neck, that you filled it right up to the top. You're there, filling it up to the top. Well, do you think that might be what they do with the electricity at the factory in your battery? Just fill it up and then put a filler neck on it so that there's a bit of a safety margin. Because I do. The survey of 11,000 plus drivers who do not currently drive an EV as their main car also shows that targeted practical measures would have far more impact on behaviour than headline incentives for a small number of new electric cars, particularly given that used cars make up around 75% of annual sales, while a significant 9% of drivers say the government's electric car grant has encouraged them to consider buying a new EV. Support rises sharply when attention shifts to the used market. Again, it's an incentive that's encouraged them. Almost half, 44% of drivers say incentives towards the purchase of a used EV, such as the interest-free loan funded by Transport Scotland, would make them more likely to buy one. An incentive. Scotland operates a government-backed interest-free loan scheme for EVs delivered by the Energy Saving Trust for Transport Scotland. Since launching in 2011, it has provided more than 230 million in interest-free loans. So, incentives. This is my take on those stories. Confidence is dead. 3%. 3%. Thanks for watching. See you in the next video. Bye-bye.